What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Ryan D. Leaf Show on a Wednesday. Hashtag RDL Show. Thanks for being a part of it. Please visit us and subscribe. We are here Monday, Wednesday, Fridays from noon to 1 Pacific. Come spend an hour with us during your day. Wanted to start the show with some heavy stuff because, we tend to do that from time to time. But we have a big show today. We're going to talk a ton of free agent and franchise tag NFL offseason stuff. And then friend of mine, friend of the show, we're going to call him friend of the show because, he wanted to come on and be a part of it. Jay Chandrasekhar, funny man, not just because he's a Chicago Bears fan, but also funny writer, director, actor, all in one, and a good golfing buddy of mine. So he's good enough to come on our show today. But first, I wanted to get into this Myers Leonard situation, and I have a a different take than probably a lot of people. I think what we're dealing with right now, in terms of this cancel culture, is a difficult thing. It's a tightrope, right? When somebody does something so wrong and despicable in the eyes of many, and uses an anti-Semitic slur like he's been using it for decades, it becomes a problem. And he was called out at him immediately. And when something like that happens, either you realize that you have a mountain of shit to climb now, or you pack it in. Now everybody else wants you to go, and there are consequences to everybody's actions, right? No matter what. I was a coach for a Division II football college program in West Texas. I stole from these young men that I coached, right? I took advantage of that. When I got better and came out the other side, people have talked to me about, hey, why don't you get back into coaching? And I'm like, there are consequences to your actions. I don't think I should ever be trusted to coach young men ever again, not with their parents or anything, no matter what. And that's okay, right? So Myers Leonard, you may apologize, you may put out your statement. That's all good, right? But you are going to have to deal with consequences. And guess what? You cannot play the victim at any point during any of this time. You're going to get shit thrown at you every single day. Still happens with me all the time. And you're going to have to brush it off. You can't take it personally. You're going to have to try to change. But just because you do something that is wrong doesn't make you a bad person. You may have done a bad thing or have done bad things in the past, but you can change through this. But it's going to be entirely up to you. And it's not going to be because of words. It's going to be because of action. What are you going to do to change? The real apology, people, is changed behavior. That is the only one that you should accept, because we can talk and talk and talk and talk about everything. I can talk circles around people. I have a damn TV show here talking about sports, right? It's about what you do. It's about what you do with it, okay? What action you take. And so I talked about that mountain of shit, right? He's gonna have to take it in the face for I don't know how long. And guess what? He may never get to play basketball again. You know what? He may get blackballed through this process. The cancel culture, the ignorance that he had with that word, that may not allow him to be a professional basketball player ever again. That's just the way it works. There are consequences to your actions, period. Doesn't mean you can't be a good person and salvage your life. You can be educated. You can understand what went wrong, why you did those things, and become a better individual. That's exactly what happened to me. So I can relate to this, right? I can relate to messing up very publicly in a bad way and what that looks like, okay? And what it means to people who admired me or followed me or looked up to me or wanted something big from somebody who has a platform like that, and they disappoint. they disappoint. Let's not just cancel people out of nowhere. Let them try to recuperate. But hey, consequences are there for a reason. You may not get the opportunity again to ever be a professional basketball player. And that's just how it works. The Ray Rice situation, his actions after that incident and how he tried to be a better person and help and give back was a perfect way to show active, to be active in that field. He never got to play professional football again, and that's okay, right? That's okay. It's not a right. It's definitely, you're not entitled to do what you're getting paid millions of dollars for if you can't act appropriately. But you now have an opportunity to change and do something in a positive direction. But like I said, you have a mountain of shit to climb, and it's going to be flung at you all day long from different directions. And not once can you act or take it on as you're the victim, because in no way, shape, or form are you at all. I put out a post today through my social media platforms about not having a pity party. You need to take ownership of everything in your life right now, just like everybody else. This is how it starts, right? Life isn't necessarily fair, but it's how you deal with it that matters. And we here at the Ryan D. Leaf Show are going to deal with it in a positive and healthy way. We are unbreakable motherfuckers. All right, that's the shirt today, by the way. If anybody else wants to see that. I want to bring in Jonathan and Sky and Charlie, my co-hosts here, and ask them. They're much younger than I am. I feel like they're more enlightened in terms of what sensitivity has been going on the last few years. It's an uncomfortable. We talked about it with International Women's Day on Monday. The uncomfortability of a history of our country, and then something like this crops up a few days later. What was your guys' take when you heard this go public, and his apology and what he's got to do moving forward through this?
Oh, so this is an interesting situation, because I don't look at it any different than if he used another. It's a racial slur for all intents and purposes, right? It wasn't just here. I want to challenge you something, Ryan. Not challenge you on something, but I want to bring something up here. And you talk about the process after, but the process after begins. The true process after begins with after you shape your perception and your perspective to understand that you did fuck up, right? So once you recognize and you accept the fact that you fucked up, then you can go and begin the process of reconciliation and figuring out, okay, what do I have to do to improve myself to maybe not even fully make up, but get to a better place.
Oh, he may never make up. This really isn't about him.
But his perspective, the thing is in his apology is where you can see his perspective. He says, and I have it here, "I'm deeply sorry for using an anti-Semitic slur during a live stream while I did not know what the word meant at the time." He's lying to himself, right? He's lying to himself, and he's lying to all of us because he knows what that word is, and
that's PR jargon.
That's fine, right? But if he came out and he said, "Yeah, I said something that is a racial slur that will hurt an entire community, an entire country of people in this world," without ill intent, but I recognize that shouldn't, versus, "Oh, I did not." It's more concerning to me if he truly doesn't know what that word means, versus if he knew what he meant, and he chose just to use it in locker room jargon.
Totally agree with you. There has to be a complete accountability here, right? Understanding that, I'm here. I'm in this moment right now because of what I did, not because of my misunderstanding of something or ignorance to something. It's because of what I said, what I did, and now I have to take a strong look in the mirror and figure out where I went wrong. And that was kind of my point to at no point moving forward, no matter how active he gets in the understanding of sensitivity and culture or anything like that, not at any point can he ever feel like he's the victim in any of this. As soon as that creeps into your mind at all, and it did in that statement, right? That statement had victim stance in it all over it, because he said, I was ignorant to what this word meant. That's like, hey, I did, poor me didn't know. And that's exactly right. Jonathan. I completely agree with that.
And we saw with Deshaun, I'm curious about what the greater commentary is on our culture, right? Because this isn't the first time this happened this year. Deshaun Jackson was suspended for using anti-Semitic speech on his Instagram story. Steven Jackson backed him up, and Steven Jackson got blasted by the ADL and major Jewish politicians in the United States. So why is it that 4 months later, Myers Leonard is going out and paralleling something that we have seen and already discussed as a society as something that you cannot do, and that it not happen?
People don't think they're part of the problem. You know, that's the problem in all this, right? They don't see themselves on the same level as anybody else. Yeah. You have this entitled mindset, and sometimes when you when you put yourself in a vulnerable position, when you make yourself on the record in a live, whatever, Twitch or anything, game playing scenario, your real personality can come out. You can't hide yourself from people if you are truly in what you figure is a relaxed setting, because the way the word rolled off his tongue, it wasn't the first time he'd said it.
He said it with his chest.
And that's the problem, right? This is it's in perpetuity. I bet you he didn't even heard of the situation with Deshaun Jackson and Steven Jackson through that process. When you're playing, you don't really pay too much attention to what's going on to anybody else. And when bad things go on with other people, you might have a sense of agreement because your values match it, or you just dismiss it like, that will never be me. I'm never going to be in that position. I go and speak all over the country about my past transgressions and how it affected me and what I changed to go moving forward. And I guarantee you those kids in those rooms are like, wow, this is a great story. Yeah, I want to be the second pick in the NFL draft. That's exactly where I want to be. But, it's a great story, but that's not going to be me, right? I'm not going to be the guy that's out of the league in 5 years and is a drug addict and, splashed all over the news for going to prison and all these things. So that's not going to be me. So Myers Leonard is watching all that play out, and he's just thinking like, no one's truly going to know what my heart is, until you fully expose yourself. And I'm glad it happened, right? I'm glad it happened, because guess what? It may change his life for the better. When you are humbled in a way where you are knocked to the bottom, you have to really figure out who you are, what your values are, what your character is. Now he can just be defensive and play the victim for the foreseeable future and never improve or never get better, and we'll just dismiss him. We'll just dismiss him as anybody else. But if he does take the time to understand what he did wrong, why he did it, that's what therapy was for me. He's going to definitely have to speak to somebody about this. Why? Why did I feel like that was something that I should, could, or would say in any situation? I remember, I grew up with 2 black kids in my high school. And so I was, I didn't understand about marginalization or adversity or anything like that. I grew up in a very, privileged environment, and I went to college, and I remember being in, when your football team's 80% black guys, you first time a rap song came on and the N-word was, and we were all singing together. Like, I remember the first look on a guy's face when we're just singing along, and you figure out really quickly. When I was in prison, I was in with a bunch of Native Americans, and it was really around the conversation about when the Washington Redskins name was in the news. And I asked them, does it offend you? And they were so indifferent, because they said, we've been called worse, and this kind of gave us something. So then I said, well, if I call you that, like from across the tier, would that be offensive? And they both looked at me like, don't fucking do that. So you understand what's offensive, and why would we ever, as a human being in this world, try to hurt somebody else? That's the bigger question in all this. We feel like this elitism and that we're better than people, especially professional athletes. I thought I was just better than everybody else because I could play this silly game for a living. And I'm sure Meyers Leonard feels exactly that, because that pedestal that he felt he was on top of, high enough to say that type of thing, that's when you get knocked off. And now we'll see. I don't want to hear another goddamn word from him. Not one. I want to see him do something different. And even if he comes back out with another apology, I'm not worried about that. It's just going to be action from this point on. That's what a true apology is, everybody. Changed behavior. And that's what I want to see moving forward. All right. Who else got something on that? Scott? Charlie?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, going off of what you were saying earlier, I think you were speaking on the cancel culture, and I'm not denying that Meyers Leonard messed up. He obviously did use an offensive anti-Semitic slur, and that definitely hit home for a lot of people. But we as a society, if we want change to actually happen, you don't just cancel somebody out. You inform them, you educate them, you teach them about why it's wrong, what the meaning of it is. So that's what I think is one of the most important things that like society has to do now on for Meyers Leonard.
Charlie, this is the Julian Edelman letter.
Julian Edelman letter, open letter to him, which I thought was very well done, and exactly what it's sensitivity training, right? You have to understand. Like, I'd never been marginalized in my life, guys, right? Ever. Like I told you, I grew up how I grew up, and I got when that judge looked at me and said, you are of no value, Mr. Leaf. I'm going to send you to prison, and I'm going to warehouse you and give you a number, right? It's the first time I'd ever been marginalized in my life. And then you had to open up your mind to everything that people have gone through and struggled with and understand it. And that was it for me, right? Now everything I look at is from a different perspective because of the things I went through. So I hope Meyers Leonard views this and sees this as an unbelievable opportunity to be better. Unfortunately, his response right out the gate around his ignorance of the word that he so flippantly used like it was nothing makes me believe that he really doesn't have any intention in getting better, but just getting this put behind him so he can move on, play basketball, make a shit ton of money, and be the racist spewing person that he is in his heart. I hope that's not the case. I hope we see change.
Does Charlie sound like a robot to you guys? Sorry, I just wanted to double check.
Yes.
Okay,
just
Charlie, you
just
sound
a
like
little
a robot right now.
Just a little bit. I just final point here. I just have a tough time in general when these things happen, and not just Meyers, but athletes, entertainers. We see this happen far too often, unfortunately. All sorts of situations. It always comes down to the intent behind it for me, and the expression and how it's used. Not necessarily what is said per se, but it's how it's said every time, and it's the actions directly after, Ryan, which you've talked about. But it's always followed up with an apology. But you can hear through the words immediately on an apology like this. You can hear right through their soul when these things happen, and you can tell when someone made a legitimate mistake. They were actually ignorant to something. Again, not just Meyers in general, and you can hear it in the quiver of their voice and their heart that they made a mistake, they feel bad, and they will work toward bettering themselves. You can also hear when it is, I don't want to use a publicity stunt.
No, when it's PR speak. When it's PR speak.
It's a somebody, texting them quick, be like, hey bro, you better clear that up immediately or you're finished. And it's the immediate kind of like, my bad, I didn't know about that, sorry. And that to me makes it so much worse in a situation where it's just disingenuous, in my opinion, and makes it more of a stain than an actual mistake, which happens. Mistakes happen. And Ryan, as you mentioned, you grow from, and we focus on that a lot on the show. And I appreciate it. I'm proud to be a part of it. But it's tough to see these guys doing things that ultimately they most likely know is wrong, doing it, getting caught or shown up,
well, that's the
and
thing.
then having something to say.
That's the thing. They don't know it's wrong because they believe it in their heart. Otherwise, it wouldn't spew from them. So they have to be educated. And guess what? Fucking up like this better educate you, or your ass is going to be gone. They'll cancel your ass quicker than anything, right?
Mhm.
That's just the way it works. And it's okay. There are consequences to it, but you don't stop moving forward, right? You like I screw up. I screw up all the time. And I screwed up a bunch. If I would have just decided, hey, you know what? I'm packing it in. I can't, I'm not going to try to improve it all. No matter what anybody else thought. Like, everybody could cancel my ass, take away every job opportunity I have and everything like that. Does that mean I just don't get up in the morning and try to be a better human being? So that's what I want to see from them. That's what I want to see from them. Now, most people don't. Most people give up and just be like, fuck them. You know what? I'm right. They're wrong. And guess what? Consequences will be, and he'll maybe be resentful and angry through it all. And that's on him. So I'm anxious to see a real response here from him.
I will say also, before we get Jay on here in a few minutes, I will say also too, it's like, it's a different time currently, to say anything, let alone something like this with social media and all the talk shows and Twitter.
It doesn't matter because they don't think about it, Sky. It's in their heart.
I understand. I understand they don't think about it.
He's like, I don't know if I'm gonna, he doesn't even have the rationalization. Like, even if I did say that, shit would get wild for me. It it doesn't even circulate in your brain at all.
Sure. And I'm not defending him. I'm more saying it's a time where,
how stupid could you be to say something like this in a time like this?
Yes, but also if he is genuinely sorry, ignorant, all these things are actually true. If it was, then he tries to better himself starting today and he's moving forward in a better light. It's not only the pile of shit, which you have mentioned, but it's also the cloud of the media that will not let this go, whether he fixes himself. Right.
May never go away. Yeah. Guess what? I still get called a bust, drug addict, felon every single day. May never go away. You can't control that. You control your part in this now, Myers. Let's see what you do with it. All right. Before we get to our friend Jay, we're going to talk a little bit about one of our big time sponsors, Sunfair. I told you guys on Monday, I started the fat burn diet this week, down 7 pounds in 2 days, everybody. Woo! I almost broke down last night at like 7 o'clock though and ordered a pizza, but I didn't do it. I went to bed and got up this morning and did a hike. Great meals today, pork tenderloin, dinner tonight, little Asian strip steak. Excited for that. See if we can get 7 days in this week. 7 days in, I'll tell you guys where I get to. You can go to sunfair.com, click on the links, sales representative and Carl Farrow, and then how you heard about it, the Ryan D. Leaf Show. Get 10% off your first delivery. Sunfair.com when you can. Jonathan, have we got Jay around yet?
No, he has not come on yet.
Okay.
I'll let you know when he does.
Jay is in quarantine right now in Vancouver, British Columbia, as he's about to start a wonderful new project. And he's going a little bit down rabbit holes while he's in Vancouver. He's got to be in quarantine for 14 days. Not only being in quarantine, but actually going, not being able to play golf, I think is probably going to be more detrimental to Jay than anything. Because I think before he left to go on this job, he probably played like 15 consecutive days. That's how much he loves playing the game. Now, how good he is, that's another story. Another problem with Jay is he's a Chicago Cubs fan. I don't know if he's born in Chicago, but he's from Chicago. And so he's a diehard Bears fan and he's a diehard Cubs fan, which, makes him really close to my heart. I'm going to reach out to him right now and see where he's at. But this show's kind of turning into a Chicago-based show now with Charlie, right?
We got him.
We got him.
There we go.
All right, so let's bring on our next guest, friend of the show now, which is great. Welcome to the RDL show, Jay Chandrasekhar, who is quarantined in another country right now, coming to us. Jay, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm good. RDL, I like that.
Yeah, it stands for. We haven't come up with what it stands for. It's my initials, but I don't think that really plays well with people anymore. So I don't know.
What's the D?
David.
Oh, David. That's right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Ryan David Lee. So we brought you on first. Well, tell me this: how are you dealing with the quarantine? Because you got to be in there for 14 days? No golf. You got to be dying right now, big guy.
Ryan, I played, as you know, 85 out of about 97 days in a row. I developed double golfer's elbow. I had trouble lifting up coffee cups, and I just kept playing on through. And now I've been in quarantine. This is day 11, and I'm in Vancouver in a pretty nice place. I mean, it's pretty nice. I always thought that I'd be somebody who could handle jail time, and I was like, I could do it. I could handle that. And solitary. I just sit and meditate and think about it. But on day 4 of this quarantine, and frankly 5, 6, and 7, I started to sort of really go to a pretty dark place mentally. I was like, oh,
what does that look like? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, I put clothes on for the television show. I've been nude most of the quarantine. I'll just let you know that. But you're like, I'm just walking around, and it was just I'm looking down on the people walking around Vancouver and feeling it wasn't something that I was comfortable with at all. But by now, day 11, I'm starting to feel the wind of freedom coming on which is 3 more days. So it's terrible. Quarantine is terrible. I'll leave it at that.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
I admired you. I was like, wow, he went through this in a real way.
I figured it out. Yeah, I wasn't staying at the Fairmont, so it wasn't as nice.
Right.
Yeah, and the staff were assholes probably in comparison to what you're going through. But I was filling everybody in about how big of a Chicago sports fan you are, in particular the Bears, and with what they went through yesterday. They franchise tagged Allen Robinson. Mitchell Trubisky is a free agent. Do you see this team trying to figure out a way to get another big name quarterback, or is there a real possibility because of his knowledge of the offense that Mitchell Trubisky could be back as a free agent when this thing's all said and done?
Well, I think Pace and Nagy are, I think the general opinion is that it's win now or possibly have to get new jobs. I'm not obviously the guy who's making that decision. I think Pace drafted defense really well and put together a pretty damn good team. I mean, the problem is when you're in the division with Aaron Rodgers, as good as Trubisky has sometimes played, we can't get past it. And so psychologically in Chicago, after dealing with 10, 12, 15 years of Brett Favre, then we had to deal with Aaron Rodgers, and you're like, when's it going to end? Look, I'm following this, all the fantasies that are going around, like Russell Wilson coming to Chicago. Yeah. I mean, I don't see how Seattle would ever let that happen, but or whether we have the draft capital to make it happen. But Chicago somehow does. It's a very sought after place to live as a sports, as a player, because we worship sports,
right?
And so Russell Wilson would become the king of Chicago,
right?
But yeah, I mean, if Trubisky comes back, we'll see. I mean, what are we going to go 8-8 again? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I like Trubisky sometimes.
Yeah, me too. I like him too. I think you try to make it work because you're kind of the most desperate team right now. Let's talk a little bit about some of your comedy works. I love it because when we were playing golf, I remember like one of the first times we were playing golf. I talked to you about this scene in Super Troopers where you guys get the guy pulled over on the side of the road and you're talking through the megaphone and the guy says back to you, "I can't pull over anymore." And I think that's one of the funniest things in the world. And you told me this interesting story about it. Can you fill our viewers in on how funny that was and why it was?
Super Troopers was a low budget movie. We made it for $1.2 million, which doesn't sound low budget, but it's it's cheap comparatively, right? So we raised the money ourselves, and so we really only had, we had it's called a picture car, and that was the car that the teens were driving in. Usually you'll have a second one of those in case one breaks down, and you'll just sort of swap it out if you need to. In our case, we only had one, and I liked that car, so we were like, it'll be fine. Of course, it breaks down, right? And so and it stopped running. So we're in this, we're running out of time, so we can't really. we have to shoot this scene. And so in the original script, the teens pull over, and then we kind of harass them a little bit, and then they pull off and drive away, and then we pull them over again, and then we have the second scene. But the car wouldn't drive. So, we just came up with this idea that we would pull away and then back up and pull in behind them again and pretend pull them over again. And the guy, Joey, who was sitting in the, Joey Kearns, his name, he was sitting in shotgun. He improvised this line. He goes, "We can't pull over. We're already pulled over." Anyway, something like that. We can't pull over any farther. So
it's one of the funnier lines from the movie.
That's fine. We didn't write it, but we put good people into the movie and hope they come up with great lines sometimes.
Well, it's good stuff. I know you're in the process of writing the third one here. What do you expect from our beloved Chicago Cubs? I'm about to go to Phoenix tomorrow. First time I'm traveling in this pandemic, but I'm going to Phoenix to do some work and play some golf. And I have a chance to jump up with the Cactus League and check out our Cubbies. What do you think about some of the additions they made this year? Arrieta back, Jock Peterson from LA come on board. What do you think of?
It's interesting because I actually just watched Catching Hell, that 30 for 30 documentary on Bartman yesterday.
You are in the hole. You are in the rabbit hole right now.
I mean, wow. I am in the rabbit hole. And when the Cubs, got when they changed GMs, obviously, I mean, it wasn't a massive change. It was, but they and then they got rid of Yu Darvish, who was, he was competing for the Cy Young. I assumed the plan was, kind of do what the White Sox did and get, go super young and try to, rebuild. I mean, let's be honest. You get rid of a guy who's running for the Cy Young, you're rebuilding, right? I mean, Arrieta, that guy is incredible. And he was, just what a hoss, right? I mean, that guy was so fun to have as a Cub, and it's great to have him back. And Jock Peterson, awesome, right? I mean, I'd be curious to know if in the GM's office they're thinking about winning the World Series this year.
Yeah.
My hunch is they're not, but I love the Cubs, and I'll watch them whether they're in first or fourth. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I'll watch it. But and if they're rebuilding, they're rebuilding. But I mean, there's smart people there, and the owner has money that I believe he's willing to spend on bringing, glory back to Chicago. I went through everything. I went through the San Diego loss. I went through the Dodger loss. I went through the Marlins loss, and then we finally beat Cleveland. And we won the World Series. And that may be enough for my whole lifetime. But, I mean, I'm feeling great about that. And so whatever they're doing now, I trust them.
I didn't get to enjoy a minute of it because I figured it was just going to end how it always had ended, and I was just watching Game 7 and they're starting losing it. I'm like, I would walked out and I wouldn't watch it. And then I got a text from somebody that said, "Oh my God." And so then I was disappointed. I didn't get to see it in real time. And then I'm just like, screw this. Can we do it one more time so that I don't have any, anxiety around it? And I just, I hope we can. But I'm going to try to go to a Cactus League game this weekend. I'll report back to you and tell you what it's looking like.
Yeah, and when they come to LA, I go to all 4 of those games.
Let's hope we can. And if so, you and I have to go do that. I really appreciate you taking time up there in Canada. This is you're our first foreign guest.
Oh yeah,
nice. Outside the country. Yeah. Nice. I think that's pretty important. But I know you got to get to something here in a few minutes. Just want to say thanks for joining us. Anytime we can have you on, we would love it. Thanks so much. Oh, this is also a plea, and we have to do this every time we talk. My co-hosts Sky and Jonathan and Charlie all are big fans, and I told them that really the only reason we're having you on the show is so I can figure out some way when your Broken Lizard movies come out in the next couple of years that I get some sort of crazy cameo, and maybe that's kind of the point.
There's always room for a big guy. I mean, like Kevin Epperson played Farva, he has a very strict opinion about, when you're hiring bad guys, they've got to be able to beat the good guys up. So he's always like, bigger. We got to go bigger. So
I should probably stop eating or on this diet and kind of bulk up a little bit more. Or am I big enough as is?
You're big enough.
All right, cool. All right. I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for taking the time, man. It was really meaningful.
All right. Thanks, RDL.
You bet. Later. Jay Chandra Sekhar, golfing buddy of mine, but just more importantly, just what an entertainer, right? Wrote all these movies, Super Trooper movies, Club Dread, Beer Fest. He was the director on Dukes of Hazzard. He told me the story, which I think is pretty great. We were on the tee box, and he's like, I can't remember if it was Sony or if it was Warner Brothers that came to him and said, we're going to do this remake of Dukes of Hazzard in movie form. He's like, no, fuck you. Not going to do it. And then they came back with more money, and he's like, no, are you kidding me? I'm not fucking doing that. Then they came back with more money, and he's like, no, still not going to do it. Then they came back with a dump truck of money, and he's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. Work
the system.
Yeah, it's a good story.
He should create like the Bad News Bears version of you. And like you should go on and like be like play like an older, like a mentor, like you're the coach, and then there's like young Ryan Leaf, and you have like figure out the little kid who plays you.
I told him I use this example. If you remember Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the reintroduction to Neil Patrick Harris, who played Doogie Howser when he was a kid, and he kind of disappeared, but he comes back and he plays this absolute warped version of himself, like this. Woman stealer, drug addict, all these things that exist. And so I suggested to him, I say, hey man, next Super Troopers, throw me in as like, all your troopers now are in trouble because you're doing so many drugs, smoking so much weed or something like that. And you've invited Ryan Leaf to come in and speak to the guys and give them an inspirational pep talk. But when I show up, when the cameras are off or turns up, I'm just going nuts, right? I'm just asking for every drug possible, every drink possible, and I'm the one stealing the car, driving away, and all this stuff. He's like, "That's really funny, Ryan, but could that really hurt your brand?" And I'm like, it didn't hurt Neil Patrick Harris's. Because people know that's not him. But I guess people could assume, like, boy, Leaf's fucking falling off the rails again, man. This dude is in trouble. So I thought that was a cool idea.
Or because, as we've talked about earlier in the show, because you have done such a strong attempt to turn things around for yourself and rebuild yourself internally. I think that the people that know your life story, it would be hilarious because we know that isn't you. And so when you're doing those things, we're all just kind of like, oh man, like this is, just you telling the story, I see the visuals. That would be entertaining. Absolutely.
Well, when I tell him on the golf course, I kind of look for a reaction of like, would that be funny? And his first reaction was, people like, I don't want to ruin your brand or anything like that. I'm like, I think it would be. I don't know. I don't take myself very seriously.
Those movies, though, man, cult classics like me growing up in high school and early college, and growing up the same. Those were spot on. So that was really great.
This is how we met. We literally got paired up together 6 months ago at the golf course. That's how we met. And that's how we become friends. We found out we were both diehard Cubs fans. He's a big sports fan. I love the movies that he did. It's cool to play around a golf and hear these amazing stories about some of these cult classics and some of the things that you hear on the entertainment side. That's what's been pretty cool about living in LA. You run into movie stars on the corner. That's why I always felt like really anonymous in this town. Like no one gives a shit if Ryan Leaf's walking down the street when you got George Clooney over on the other side or something like that. So that makes sense.
Double tennis elbow. Ooh.
Yeah, double. Yeah, and the funny thing is, he told me the day before, he's like, "I'm not going tomorrow. I can't play." And then we play like a week later, and I'm like, hey, "Was it good to have time off?" He's like, "I played every day. I'm sorry. I can't help myself."
It's in the blood, man. It's in the blood.
So, show's gotten away from us as it normally does. We have conversations, we get going. So let's get to our other sponsor, Athletic Brewing. Everybody. I got my Upside Dawn right here. Go to athleticbrewing.com and get 10% off your first 2 6-packs shipped right now. Athleticbrewing.com. Non-alcoholic brewing company. If you like the taste IPAs of great brewed beer, but don't like the consequences that come with it. The day after, the hangover, any of it, just good taste. Just like this Athletic Brewing non-alcoholic golden Upside Dawn. We always crack one open during the show. It's so good, guys. It should be a post drink celebration. Really, really good. Go to athleticbrewing.com when you can. Order it. It's about health. It's about wellness. It's about taking care of one another. So athleticbrewing.com. Thank you for all you do for our show here at the RDL Show. All right. We talked about it initially when we started the show. You know, the franchise tag deadline was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
What teams would they attach to their players? You know, what players would not be given the tag and now become free agents? Now, don't get me wrong. When we talk about these players here, all right, there is a week left before free agency really opens. March 17th, I believe, is when free agency fully starts. So there is a week for teams to sign this. One in particular we talked about with Jay just a minute ago was in Chicago. And that was Allen Robinson. He signed or he was franchise tagged by Chicago. This interested me a little bit because there was just nothing talked about. I mean, all season long, Allen talked about how he wanted to be there, how he wanted to stay there, and no one negotiated the contract. And then the offseason so far, not a peep, no one. Allen had said he wanted to stay, but nothing from the team. And then all of a sudden, here we go. Just franchise tag like it was nothing. And I asked the question last night on SiriusXM NFL Radio, and the answer I got back from my co-host Alec Marvez was, you know, this was very similar to Galladay at Detroit a year ago when they franchise tagged him. Their asking price was such a non-starter that they simply did not even acknowledge it and just franchise tagged him. And maybe Allen Robinson and his team, the number they were sending towards Chicago was just a non-starter, and they said we're going to wait till we franchise tag him. And good for the Bears, because if they would have lost him in free agency, I do not know what they were going to do offensively. Now they don't have a guy to throw him the ball right now. Nick Foles is the only quarterback on the roster under contract, and that experiment didn't really go that well last year when they tried to throw him in for Mitch Trubisky. But what was your guys' thoughts? I know, Charlie, you thought that, you know, not a lot of people probably like this. I think it's a great thing. They had to keep Allen Robinson there, or they were going to be just begging for offensive skill position players to make plays next year.
Yeah, for sure. But the biggest thing is, like, franchise tag him is fine, but I want to sign him to a long-term extension. And that could just be what's going to happen, hopefully. Robinson just wants some more respect on his name. In the past 2 years, he's fourth in receiving yards, and last year he had over 102 receptions, which is the most in his career. So he's producing even when there's not the best talent at the quarterback position. So he just wants some respect on his name and to be considered among the best. And I think the Bears have to pay him what he wants. And yeah, franchise tagging him, good. You can hold on to him for right now, but we got to sign him long term.
Who do you guys pay? Like I have a real like strong boundary around who you pay. I believe you don't pay wide receivers, you don't pay running backs, you don't pay kickers, you pay quarterbacks, you pay pass rushers, and you pay left tackles or, you know, blindside tackles, whether you're a left-handed or right-handed quarterback. I also think if you find a very versatile linebacker who can play in a 3-4 system and rush the passer as well as draw back and make plays, there you look to pay as well. But I don't believe you pay a wide receiver. I don't think there is a guy in this league that is DeAndre Hopkins, maybe, you know, but you know, it's still translated into an 8-8 year or 7-9 year. So I'm not sold in paying big extensions to wide receivers. I'm going to ask him to take a team-friendly deal if they do want to sign an extension. And same with running backs. I do not pay a running back at all.
I love this take. I'm so happy you have this take, Ryan, because I got in a Twitter fight with some LSU fans a couple months ago when it was Justin Herbert versus Jamar Jefferson for the rookie of the year, the offensive
Justin
rookie
Jefferson.
of the year.
Justin Jefferson, yeah.
Jamar Chase coming to the league next year.
Did I say Jamar Chase?
You said
No,
Jamar.
you
You said Jamar Jefferson. So you just used
Jamar
the
Jefferson.
one name. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. Anyways, Justin Jefferson. Thank you, friends. And they're like, Justin Jefferson is a transcendent wide receiver. He's breaking all the Randy Moss's record, all this stuff. And the truth is, with Kirk Cousins as his quarterback, what Justin Jefferson was doing was actually very impressive. The reason that Justin Herbert was going to win the Rookie of the Year is because his position is more valuable to the team's success and to the game of football. Even though a quarterback now a quarterback is breaking a quarterback record every single year because DVOA is down and offense is inflated, right? That's just how we're seeing the game. And to your point, Ryan, why are you paying the quarterback and all the pieces that you just mentioned? Because they either protect the quarterback or on the defensive side, they're disrupting the opposing team's quarterback. Because how do you win games? You get after the quarterback and you have great quarterback play. And the Super Bowl is the perfect example of that, right? Guess what Todd Bowles did? They exposed the flaws on the offensive line in Kansas City, put Pat Mahomes under pressure, and guess what? Tyreek Hill was not that good. He's a good wide receiver, but he's only great when Pat Mahomes elevates Tyreek Hill's game. And DeAndre Hopkins, 8-8 season, he's a great wide receiver. He had a game-winning touchdown catch over 2 guys. But guess what? 3 guys. Kyler Murray just isn't there yet to elevate it's more than just one wide receiver on a team or one running back on a team that make a team successful. But if you have a quarterback, if you have a Tom Brady, if you have a transcending talent like Aaron Rodgers, it doesn't matter who you have at wide receiver or at running back. As long as that person is protected and your defense is executing so that way you can get enough points on the board to beat your opponent, you're going to win football games. And that's why you don't pay anybody else.
Yeah, why did Green Bay lose that game? Because guess what? Bakhtiari was out, and that left tackle got exposed, and Aaron Rodgers was under pressure, and that's the way it is. And Tampa. Speaking of franchise tagging, they franchise tagged Chris Godwin, and this was Shaq Barrett was another one that was a possibility, and they let him go. Now he can re-sign with the team, but after the performance of this year, it's looking more and more likely like Shaq Barrett's going to be somewhere else rushing the passer next season. In fact, from what I'm hearing, Atlanta is strong in the mix there. Would it be ironic that he'll be running after and chasing down Tom Brady a year from now, twice a year? Chris Godwin, I think that's hey, keep a guy there. What's interesting is they franchise tagged the second receiver. Mike Evans is the number 1 receiver on that team, even though Chris Godwin got targeted a little bit more when the year was finally done. But I was hoping he would stay there. Tom Brady knows what he wants, and I'm sure he had a say in that with Bruce Arians and their general manager before they made that move. The Jacksonville Jaguars, Cam Robinson, this surprised me. He's going to get paid as a top 5 offensive lineman protecting Trevor Lawrence. Now, they must really feel like he can make an improvement in his pass protection because he's struggled in his run production. But if that's what they believe, that they have to protect Trevor Lawrence and Cam Robinson's the guy, that's a hefty price to pay for a left tackle, maybe as a as a bandage, just to hold over for a year, because then you're ultimately going to have to sign him, and you set the precedent now that he is a top 5 left tackle, and if that's not the case, he's going to be asking for that money next year, and you're going to have to probably look elsewhere. So that surprised me a little bit. Other surprises, guys, that you had. What was the one in Aaron Jones in Green Bay, right?
Yeah, I was about to say Green Bay did not put the franchise tag on Aaron Jones.
They didn't put a franchise tag on anybody. I know Sky has got some top free agents running through here. Aaron Jones is one of them. Carson out of Seattle, Fournette down in Connor in Pittsburgh, Drake, Gurley, White, Lindsey, and Bell. Le'Veon Bell is an interesting one for me. Where does Le'Veon Bell go? Nowhere. I think his career is over.
Wow. I don't disagree. It's just crazy to hear that after
fallen.
3 years of him. 3 years ago, he was undeniably the best running back in the league.
But guess what? This is why you don't pay anybody but quarter. And by the
Thank
way,
you.
But by the way, this point that we're proving right now is why Dak Prescott's a genius for doing what he did, because he knows his mark. All he had to do was wait. And everybody was sitting there saying, oh, the Cowboys are being stupid. Dak Prescott is being stupid. Dak Prescott is being stupid. The Cowboys aren't going to. And no, he was just waiting because he understood the value of his market, and he understood where he stood in that. And he just executed, and he was smart, and the Cowboys were smart, and they waited. And eventually, guess what? Dak Prescott got paid. Why? Because you pay your quarterbacks, because that's the ultimate piece that's going to make you successful. Melvin Gordon lost out because Melvin Gordon thought, oh, I'm entitled. I'm going to hold out. And guess what? Melvin Gordon is not worth what he's even being paid in Denver right now. So
you're talking about a Dak Prescott deal. This broke right after we got off the show Monday, and he resigns for 4 years, $160 million, 126 guaranteed.
Ooh,
wow. You know, what was my answer to you guys in response to text? I was
born in the wrong decade.
I was born in the wrong decade. Now, I made a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. You know, I had the highest contract ever when I signed it. It lasted for about 2 days until Peyton signed his. But still, you know, I had the highest contract ever in NFL history at one point.
It counts.
You know, yeah, it counts for something. But listen, I had an interesting conversation again on NFL radio last night about this contract, because a lot of people are talking about the Prescott camp really winning here. And I don't like that necessarily. I don't like, you know, either the Cowboys won this or the Prescott camp won this. They're a team. You know, they're together as a team now. They want this to work out. It's just a negotiation, and sometimes the negotiations make you think there's a winner and a loser. I had an interesting conversation with Alex Marvez again last night about what this contract really is. And he pointed out that this is going to be the third year of a 6-year contract. And then he took me through it. 2 years ago, Dak played on the final year of his rookie contract, which was $2 million, which was the greatest deal in the world for how he was playing in terms of, you know, franchise quarterbacks everywhere. And then last year, they placed the tag on him for around $32 million. So you take that, there's 34. You split that in half, about $17 million in his first 2 years of his contract. The last 4 will be 160. So it comes out to be around $32 million on average. So if you look at this as a 6-year contract, which I think the Joneses and the Cowboys have, they feel like they're getting a pretty good deal. They get a franchise quarterback for about $32 million a year, when the going right now really looks like it's going to be about 40 or possibly higher moving forward. So that's a way for other people to take a look at how the Cowboys ended up on this deal. And also, I think Jerry Jones fairly surely knows where this cap is going, and it's only going up when this new TV deal is done here this offseason.
Dak has been very effective over the last 3 years. He's completed 67% of his passes, nearly 8 yards per attempt, 61 touchdowns to just 23 interceptions. Obviously, that's a great ratio there. And then average 18.2 rushing yards per game and 12 rushing touchdowns. So he gives you that dual threat that is the new wave of the NFL. Ryan, the question out front, though, in Dallas and everywhere else in the NFL after a significant drought since Troy Aikman days plagued Tony Romo's otherwise quite solid career. Do the Cowboys actually make and potentially win a Super Bowl, though, within the next 4 years?
Well, I mean, you try to tie up the quarterback that you think can do it. That's all you can do in this, and then hope that everything else falls in line. They have not proven that to be the case systematically in Dallas. They got a new defensive coordinator. You know, when you look back at their teams when they won, they were a run first offense, but that's not what the NFL is about anymore. And now they're saddled with a running back who was more of a liability last year than Ezekiel Elliott until like 2026. Like, they really cannot unload him until 2023 with that amount of cap hit that they take. And that for me was a big mistake on their part. As we said about it earlier, do not pay running backs. Carolina, I know how like effective McCaffrey's been. Don't pay him though.
Gets injured every year.
Come on, I had him in fantasy a couple of years ago, and he went off. He deserves all the money he wants. He got me.
You
40
pay
points
Alvin Kamara.
So you pay fantasy players. You can't play NFL players, Charlie. That's how it goes.
Yeah,
you got to pay the fantasy
I have a soft spot for Christian McCaffrey. I will say,
of course.
But I do have a question regarding Dak. Are
Shoot.
you nervous for him coming back with this very serious injury?
Well, clearly the Cowboys weren't. Yeah, clearly the Cowboys weren't nervous. Otherwise, they don't back up the Brinks truck filled with money if they didn't see this trending in the right direction on how the rehab was going, everything like that. It was a freak accident, but you know, it was an everyday football play. It was him outside the pocket, just getting pulled down, and it snapped. So you know, it was something that you had to be fearful. I felt, and I've said this a while back before this all played out, I thought they would franchise tag him again because they wanted to see if the injury was okay, and then have an extension set for next year. That's where I thought they were going to go with it. That may have disappointed Dak and may have put him in a situation where he would look elsewhere a year from now, and maybe that was just too much for Jerry Jones to take the risk on. And he signed up his quarterback for the future for the next 4 years. Now, are they a team that is in the conversation in the NFC for a title? As long as Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers are still around, the way the improving LA Rams and San Francisco 49ers.
Can't cut out Russell Wilson just yet.
Yeah, you can't cut out Russell Wilson just yet. So
on the Bears,
we'll see. You and Jay can go.
Charlie goes
go
to
down that
wishing
rabbit
well
hole.
after every show and throws in a penny, wishing that Russell Wilson will end up.
We
in the
will
Bears
see
Super Bowl.
Russell Wilson throwing touchdowns to Allen Robinson this year. Mark my words.
Okay. I'm going to do this for you once more before we get out of here. Okay. They don't have the draft equity to send to Seattle. Their cap is already a mess. The Seattle Seahawks are not going to take a $39 million cap hit not to have their franchise quarterback there. They're not going to do that this year. And that's the end of it. And let's be pragmatic and live in the real world, Charlie. Okay. I know what you're thinking, but we're going to live in the real world, at least until Friday when you have the run of the show, when I'm gone.
Boom.
And you can just do whatever you want. All right. And then have free flow to it all. Okay. I'm good with that.
Ryan, I do have a final question here on the Cowboys, and it's maybe somewhere that often gets overlooked when we have these conversations about Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Blake Jarwin are all signed through the next 3 or 4 years. So the team nucleus, assuming they stay healthy, is what we all want it to be. The big question mark for me is not only the defense, which struggled mightily last year, but the aging offensive line, which just 2 or 3 years ago was, bar none, the best in the NFL across the board. But Frederick retires, Martin's getting injured. They have a number
Smith's getting injured.
Smith's getting injured, Lyle Collins. I mean, we have a number of huge question marks on otherwise very steady options long-term for not only Dak, but Zeke and the offense overall. Are you concerned in general about like the front and the offensive line, which hasn't been a concern in Dallas for a very long time?
Definitely. Both things that need to be addressed this offseason, the health of that offensive line, the depth of the defense. The defense was a huge factor in how, look at the first 5 games where Dak broke every record for passing yards in those first 5 games, and they lost.
Shootouts in the 40s. It was terrible.
Yeah, and it can't be like that. It just can't be. You got to have a decent enough defense to get enough stops to make a difference. So yeah, those are those things that you talked about. Yeah, all those skill position players, and they're position players that don't really mean anything to me, right? Wide receivers and running backs, don't pay them. You can get it done with your quarterback. Have your left tackle ready. Hopefully Tyron Smith is healthy, because that guy is a beast. If he can play all 16 games, he signed a huge 8-year contract because Jerry likes to do that, so he can move money around to make things work down the line in the cap. But doesn't help things when your big left tackle gets injured, and then it becomes a problem. So definitely. Before we get out of here, let's go to see if there was any questions today. I know we were going to do a Q&A, but I don't think we really had a question today.
Quiet
I think
this Wednesday. People working, I guess, midday, huh?
I guess. You missed a hell of a show, people. I'm telling you right now. And if you didn't, and you were just so enthralled that you couldn't type anything because you were just like, oh my God, I can't take my eyes off Leaf and this crew and Jay and everybody. Well, come back Friday, noon to 1 here on YouTube. Check us out. Don't forget to subscribe. We appreciate you spending the day with us. I'm going to be off Friday, but the boys are going to take it home. I may make a little appearance from the golf course there in Scottsdale. So everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you for being a part of the show, growing it as we do. We'll see you next Friday on the RDL show.